Imagine a timeline where the undisputed financial capital of the world sits right here, seamlessly integrated into the lush wetlands of the Nile Delta. In this reality, the emblem of the falcon god Horus is what travels across the solar system. Mars is no longer a dead planet. It is a terraformed colony operating under the banner of Sekhmet. This world is powered by concentrated solar energy, a direct evolution of early sun worship, and the ancient Egyptian obsession with the afterlife has manifested as a digital consciousness hosted on planetary-scale cloud servers. While this sounds like a distant future, it represents the potential end state of a civilization that never stops growing. We are living in a different reality because of a strategic decision made 5,000 years ago that traded global momentum for local security. Standard History celebrates Pharaoh Menes as a brilliant tactician. This carving shows the moment he achieved the impossible, smashing the northern armies and uniting Upper and Lower Egypt into the world's first superpower. But look closer at what followed. That very victory created a geographic boundary. Once the borders were secured, Menes stopped operating as an expansionist leader and began focusing entirely on the internal administration of the river. By focusing his immense new resources on managing a single country, he unintentionally limited his empire's growth. He won the war for Egypt, but his decision to stop at the shoreline effectively ended the push for a global Egyptian hegemony. In 3095 BC, Menes stood on the Mediterranean coast. Before him was an empty horizon, but his admirals had already reported back on the wealth of the lands across that water, the cedar forests of the north and the metal deposits of the west. Menes was seduced by the security of the riverbank. He turned his back on the Mediterranean and chose the predictable abundance of the Nile's flood cycles over the high-risk expansion of maritime trade. He diverted the river itself to build a massive inland capital at Memphis. This shifted the empire's energy into static power, building deep administrative routes and stone infrastructure that was designed to stay in one place. By choosing the certainty of farming over the risks of the sea, Menes built what became a golden cage. He traded the potential for an interconnected maritime empire for the isolation of a landlocked regional power. Consider the alternative. If Menes had taken that same immense labor used to build these static monuments and directed it toward the coast, he could have established the most sophisticated naval shipyard of the Bronze Age. Egypt held a complete monopoly on papyrus, the ancient world's exclusive medium for high-level administration. A maritime strategist would have weaponized this monopoly, using strict export embargoes to ensure rival states remained administratively blind while Egypt controlled the flow of information. Instead of waiting for conflict, Egypt could have practiced religious imperialism. By sending agents to incorporate foreign gods into the Egyptian pantheon, the pharaoh would have effectively removed the cultural capacity for local populations to resist his divine authority. This naval expansion would lock down the Mediterranean millennia before Rome. By securing Crete, Cyprus, and the Iberian Peninsula, Egypt controls every major trade artery. Establishing permanent garrisons at these chokeholds, especially the Strait of Gibraltar, would make the sea an Egyptian lake. Menes had the unified military and the technological leverage to build this maritime empire. Instead, he chose to focus inward, leaving the most strategic terrain in the region completely unclaimed. Without a centralized naval power to stabilize trade, the ancient world eventually fractured, leading to the Bronze Age collapse. This regression wiped out centuries of accumulated knowledge and plunged humanity into a literal dark age. If an Egyptian maritime hegemony had prevented that collapse, the technological development of humanity would have remained unbroken. Avoiding those lost centuries of regression is what would have pushed the Industrial Revolution forward by thousands of years. When civilization operates from a single stable center for 5 millennia, progress compounds. The global resource network we see today would have been established under a single administrative authority, potentially eliminating the tribalism and conflict that defined later history. This is the tragedy of reaching the finish line. Menes' failure wasn't in how he fought his wars, but in how he handled his victory. He fell into a trap common to many successful leaders. Once he achieved his primary goal of unification, he stopped being a predator and became a guardian. He focused on maintaining what he had already won. It is a reminder that treating success as a final destination guarantees eventual stagnation. True power is a vector. It requires a constant focus on the next horizon. Mena left us a legacy of stone monuments in a desert. The question is, are you spending your time building walls around your current successes, or are you willing to set sail into the unknown?